All right, you're rolling.
Okay, I'm going to call a meeting to order at call 103. We have a quorum. In fact, all 5 committee members are present. 4 of us are here in the Peach Room, and Keith Kaiser is joining us virtually. We have one, I'll call member of the public, Ken Petrini. First item of business is the approval of the agenda. I want to make a comment or two about that. Number one, if you go down under new business, we have M04 maintenance of lots. That's a duplication for something that's also under unfinished business. So under new business, the M04 can be deleted. It'll be covered out above that in unfinished business. The other is that under new business, we have M02, an amenity policy draft that came to the committee last week and was distributed to each of the members prior to this meeting. Intention is to move that up into the beginning of the business so that we give as much attention to it as it deserves, and it doesn't get down to the bottom of the agenda. So when we get through our preliminary parts of the agenda, that'll be moved up. It'll be moved up kind of tentative to our liaison being able to participate. She's not here at the present time yet. At any rate, any other comments, additions, deletions, whatever on the agenda? Okay, if not, I'm going to take that as approved with the deletion of M04 under new business. The minutes of prior meeting, June 10th, have been previously distributed. Are there any additions, deletions, comments on the minutes from the June 10th?
I make a motion to approve as listed.
Second. Okay, we have a motion approved, seconded. Any other discussion on that? Okay, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Please
Aye.
indicate so. Okay, approved. All right, are there any public comments? I see we have at least one public member. Is it okay? We'll continue on with the agenda. The agenda, as I indicated in the email that distributed the agenda, amendments and other materials, is rather lengthy and appears to be rather daunting. A lot of that is simply review of or updating of the status of particular items, and they won't require, a lot of it won't require some significant discussion as we go along. So hopefully we can make at least considerable progress on the agenda items. It's not entirely necessary that we make it all the way through the agenda, but we can make a pretty good run at it. As I indicated, we're going to want to bring B01 up, or B01's at the top of the unfinished business, and bring M02 up with it, but we'll see what transpires as far as being able to review that with our liaison. So let's go with B01. Let me give some brief background on it. This is a carryover from the last meeting in which the committee had discussed the legal review part of the resolution, in particular, the paragraph, I think it's 4D or thereabouts.
Yeah.
In which we considered the legal review requirements for a resolution. And what's before the committee is the red line draft. Yeah, you've got it up there, I believe, Josh. You could scroll down, it would be on the 3rd page of the resolution.
Colette's online too.
Whoa.
Colette joined.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry I was late. I had
Okay.
trouble getting something down.
Colette, we're going to do B0. We just started B01, so we're going to finish that up and then go immediately into M02.
Okay,
Again, the brief background on this, we had some concerns about the legal review and a particular situation on the search committee resolution, in which an amended version was approved by the board, but there was concerns by the attorney, and wound up having to come back again and amend further the search committee resolution, and that's kind of screws things up on the legal review process. So in order to try to avoid that kind of thing, we've changed we're proposing a draft to go to the board as a first reading, that when the board seeks legal review, council must affirm the legal review prior to it going into the book of resolutions. It's up to the board as to when it wants to obtain a legal review, before or after the board reviews and approves an amendment or a new resolution. Whenever that needs to be or wants to be done by the board is up to the board, but the requirement is that the attorney has to have it. It has to be signed by the attorney before it goes into the book of resolutions. And this change deletes references to recommendations for review, but it does not in any manner preclude a recommendation from a committee, this committee or any other committee, a board member, or for that matter, a member of the association standing up in public comments at a board meeting. So that's the background for this this draft that the committee has before it, and I leave it out for any further comment by the committee members. The intention is to proceed with this at a first reading to the board, but any comments by the committee?
Well, if I can just ask a question, in the added language where it said the board seeks legal review, do we see that as a more formal process than the fact that council may just provide or opine about a particular resolution that's in front of the board at the time? In other words, I guess what I'm asking is, does council have to provide something in writing, even if it's just a signature, to indicate that he has completed a more formal review, or are we just?
Okay.
I'm curious as to what we're defining without having to do so within the resolution, what a legal review would be.
Before I would consider, based on what you just said, it sort of seeks written legal review.
Written legal review.
Yeah, I would. But that address your.
Yeah, that's that. I just wanted to eliminate any uncertainty of what we're talking about.
That's a good point. I understand. Any further comments? All right, what my proposed action is to insert the word written, seeks written legal review, amend this draft in that manner, and then forward it on to our liaison for consideration at the first reading. Is that the action that we're looking at? Is that the when we can take a motion and vote on it if we think that's necessary?
So moved.
I agree.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, with the word seeks written legal review, that amendment to the draft, those in favor just indicate by aye or saying
Aye.
aye. All right, it's
Aye.
approved, no unanimously approved. So what I will do is make that change and forward it to our liaison as our request to the board for a first reading. Okay. Let's mark that off on the agenda and go to the next item. What we're going to do now.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
Jim. If I have to bail out of this meeting, do you have a quorum? Do you have what you need to keep going?
Yeah, we have all five present, including you right now.
Okay, because
So
if
we're good.
I've got a family thing that came up and I really would like to bail out of this if I could. I hate to do that to you.
Okay, we're good with the quorum.
All right, I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Take care.
Here. Okay. On the agenda, what we're going to do is bring M02, the amenity policy draft that's been circulated. We're going to bring that up for our next consideration in the agenda. So let me move some papers around here first. An approach I'd like to take on this, there's a number of amendments, big and small, or maybe one big and a bunch of modest size amendment provisions in this. I would like to skip back in the resolution to, if I can get to the right page here. Hang on a second. Okay, I don't have the page numbers on the copy I have here, but it's paragraph 12, general policies, and the new provision, paragraph G. This is the part that starts out, keeps, whoops. I'm sorry, I don't see where, need to go back a little bit.
Number 12.
Well, there we go. You got it there, Josh.
Wrong version of the MO2.
Okay, this goes along, this is an additional paragraph or subparagraph that goes along with E and F, where it says the manager of each facility and designated facility and so on has full control and in their they can deny service, etc. if in their judgment the person being denied the facility is acting in violation of facility rules, regulations, governing documents, and so on. Then it goes on to say in the next subparagraph that the GM has the authorities to suspend the use of amenities by any person or group for infractions of the rules, regulations, or policies of the association. Now we have a new or proposed subparagraph that has an appeal process for the available to the individual who has in some manner been suspended from facilities as a result of some violation of rules and regulations as indicated in prior two subparagraphs.
So Jim, I'm going to interject here that Jeremy got back from vacation and looked at this, and he advised us to not institute an appeal process at this time for a variety of reasons. And so this was a suggestion that Larry Perrone had made, and there was some interest among the board to include it, but there was not a strong, feeling by the members of the board that we should have an appeal process. Jeremy's strongest reason is the same one that you gave me, Jim, and that is that we don't have explicit authority in our governing documents to have any kind of an appeal body for any of these sorts of decisions.
Okay. What consideration has been given with regard to the adequacy of E and F for addressing violations, whatever violation may occur? Are those two subparagraphs or paragraphs, whatever, really adequate for actually for the general manager to have his authority, to have the authority to suspend use?
Yeah, I think that's also part of the issue. And my understanding is that there is perhaps a change in Maryland HOA law that is in the offing that will address itself to this issue. And then, so I think his thought is that at this time, we should probably not change these two provisions. To leave E and F pretty much where it is, where they are, but strike G. And then sometime later in the fall, the expectation is that there may be some change in the Maryland HOA law that addresses itself to this.
Okay. Let's go back to the very beginning.
Legislature's not in session. How can there be a change in the HOA law?
Yeah, it would have to be, if it hasn't been, if the legislation hasn't been introduced and passed by now, it's going to have to wait till January to start somewhere through the legislative process. We're basically a
Okay,
year.
well, that may be true. So at any rate, at least at this point in time, there's nothing, according to Jeremy, there's nothing in the Maryland HOA law or our governing documents that we can firmly, other than this language in a resolution, that we can perhaps firmly rest upon with respect to this.
Colette, can I ask a question? Is Jeremy of the impression that amending M02 with the language in G is by itself not an insufficient grant of authority?
I think, this suspensions have been done on the strength of M02. But I think the concern is that, that may not be strong enough. I think what he likes is if we have really, something in the charter, something in the bylaws, something in the Maryland HOA law, it strengthens the authority that is asserted in these resolutions.
Well, I mean, I'll defer to his expertise, but it does seem to me that if you engage in suspending of amenities or activities or whatever term you want to use, the affected person has to have a right of appeal.
Yeah, and I think that there's, I think the feeling is that that's true, but there's nothing in our governing documents, from Maryland HOA law on down that gives us the authority to create a panel to hear these appeals. And so the discussion has been that perhaps, the original recommendation was that it be a panel comprised of committee chairs. And based on how M02 is written right now, that the authority to suspend rests with the GM, that committee members should not be able to override the GM's decision. The only body that should be able to do that would be the board, to member a panel made up of either board officers or board members who in the bylaws have the authority over the GM.
Well, that's probably a legitimate concern, I guess, but I am reminded, at least in part, judge's opinion in the Farr case, where he did point out that Mr. Farr did not have an opportunity to appeal that decision.
Right. Yeah.
And I believe he used the term due process in that opinion at that time. So like I said, I mean, Jeremy knows this better than anybody else, but
yeah, that was a different type of matter.
However,
However, that was not a suspension of rights. It was a dispute as to whether the individual had had eligibility that they asserted, based on the basis that they asserted their eligibility.
Yeah, I don't know that.
So that's a different matter.
That may be, in this case, a distinction without a difference, but that's not my point. What I'm sort of getting at is there may be nothing that grants the HOA the authority to set up an appeals process But I'm assuming there's also nothing that keeps an HOA from establishing an appeals process. I don't
Right.
disagree. I don't disagree with the notion
Yeah.
that perhaps board members as opposed to committee chairs might be the appropriate way to go. That legitimate
Yeah.
concern. But my own suggestion would be this should not wait too much longer. But that's just
Right,
my-
yeah, no, I think it's agreed. So I think what we need to, look at is, whatever legislation Jeremy is, thinking about or referencing or expecting to come down. And, I think leave this intact because it's been used up to this point. The GM has delegated suspension authority to facility directors. And suspensions have been meted out. So our precedent is there that this language has been there for some period of time. It's been used in the regulation of the amenity usage. And I certainly hear what you're saying, Steve, about in the absence of a prohibition that by default the decision could be made to engage in an action. And the court hasn't always agreed with that. And I think that may be part of the issue that we have in our current litigation, but I haven't discussed that with our attorneys. And so I think that, we probably need to, leave this to the attorneys at this point.
Yeah.
And, so Jeremy's preference was that we strike G and we leave the other language of E and F intact. And then we, see what comes down from the legislature that may strengthen the authority.
My question is, the way E and F are written, we're saying that the GM has the authority to do any of the suspensions. It does not say anything about board of directors suspending. And when you are giving someone, even if they designate a facility assistant or the manager of a facility has full and complete control, and can make that decision on their own, where is the documentation then that justifies their decision to suspend somebody from using the whatever amenities or whatever? Because I'm really concerned about the fact that it is not written in there or has never been included in there, that the person has an opportunity to appeal. I mean, even in our own ARC regulations, if somebody gets a letter about the roof needing fixed, they have an opportunity to respond to that. How can we, in good conscience, even legally, I don't understand how Jeremy is letting us be able to say that then, and not giving a person a way to explain or, counter question any decision made by the GM or that facility manager, because,
Laura, if I may interject, Laura, Laura, I'm going to have to interrupt you here. All of these issues may be at play in litigation that is pending. And I think we need to bring this discussion to a close. Your points are well taken, but this could have an impact. My concern is the impact on pending legislation. And it's not something I'm at liberty to discuss because I'm a defendant. The association is a defendant. So I think that we need to leave these pieces of that, of M02 as is at this point. That's what has been in effect up to this point. And there may be changes at some point in the future, depending on pending legislation, but also pending litigation.
Then I would like it documented that there are questions and concerns from at least one committee person, myself, in how this is worded. Even if we have to table that conversation now based on decisions made by other people. I think this needs to be revisited.
Okay, let's continue on here. Let's go back to the beginning of the draft and take these changes one at a time. I'll be back to page 1, first page, Josh. In the middle of it, there's a complete subparagraph that's deleted. I'm not quite sure where that came from at that point in this draft, because it doesn't appear in the current resolution in the book of resolutions. But at any rate, the points or items in this particular draft about establishing a schedule of fees and so on, they're actually covered elsewhere in the resolution. So deleting this in particular has no impact on the resolution itself. You go back to I think it's 9B, 13A, and maybe another subsection that I can't read in my notes, and you'll find the same information or essentially the same information is picked up as to how the schedule of fees is established and so on. There's a minor wording change above that where the word carrying out is crossed out and inserted conducting. So unless anybody has any comment on that kind of thing, Bob, you have a
The only question, I have no problem with deleting it, but then D has to become E.
D has become C.
C.
I mean, C.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Excuse me, yeah,
D would become C.
that's all. The rest of it makes sense.
Colette, on our comments here, do you want us to write out our own comments and send them to you? Or are you going to be taking them down as we go?
I can take them down. So what I have up to this point is that you're in agreement with the changes up to through section 2. The only additional correction is to change the numeration from D to C for the final point under 2.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the next page. There are a number of entries in red. We're in the general use amenities. Does anybody have any comment on that? That's just a listing of, in this case, a listing of, in 3A, it's a listing of general use amenities.
It just makes sense the way it's listed.
Okay, I have a comment that goes back in time that I'll just briefly comment on. It's the boat ramps. The boat ramps in the past have been a somewhat of a controversial issue as to where they belong. Are they general use or are they fee-based? And they've gone back and forth originally as fee-based. Then they go to, I got that backwards, originally as general use, then they became fee-based in another later revision. Now the draft is going to show them as general use, whereas the current revision in the Book of Resolutions shows them as fee-based. I don't think the committee has any particular interest in where they are. There's no governing documents issue involved that I know of. But I just want to bring to attention that this has been an issue of some degree of controversy, and just make that point. How the boat ramps themselves are used, they're administered, they're controlled, all that sort of thing is up to the board and the administration. It's just been, however, this has been a back and forth issue over time in case it comes up again. That's my only point, and I'll just leave it at that. Moving on down to the next one is the fee-based amenities. And again, we have the listing of them there. Any comments on that?
I just have one question. Racket facilities at Manklin Meadows. I'm assuming those are the only racket facilities and there's no expectation of having new racket facilities except those located at Manklin Meadows. Otherwise, I would suggest we just strike Manklin Meadows, but I mean,
There is a racket facility at the Swim and Racket Club that is free.
Okay.
So if you look at
Right.
under the free amenities, it says tennis courts at the Swim and Racket Club. Those are free.
Right, I see that, yeah.
That's
So-
why it was written that way.
So we're not expecting any, for the foreseeable future, we're building any new racket facilities.
No, no.
Okay.
Hey, this is Josh. Real quick, do you want to use the proper name there of the facility? It's the Ocean Pines Tennis Center or Racket Sports Center, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what
Sure.
to-
So that's 4B,
Yes, or
5B.
5B. Question
So
I-
what's the name of it? Ocean Pines?
It's the Ocean Pines Racket Center.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have the beach club, golf club, and yacht club listed under both general and fee-based. I can realize that there are elements that fit both in each one.
Well, the banquet and meeting facilities are fee-based. The food and beverage amenities are not fee-based. You don't pay an entry fee to use the beach club, golf clubhouse, or yacht club, but you pay a fee to use the banquet facilities. That's what differentiates them.
Okay. All right, I'm going to leave the person going to leave the listing of the amenities alone. All right, let's move on to the next page. I got to fold my copy back so I can read it. Okay, this is the non-association member use provision, which has got a deletion as well as an addition to it. Any comments on this particular this non-association member use topic? Okay, I'm a little concerned in two aspects, and that's where we appear to say that the general public is limited to daily fees. I understand that part, but what's being crossed out is a part that provides for those who are not residents to be able to purchase what has sometimes been called the club memberships, the golfing membership, a pool membership, for example, are examples of non-residents being able to purchase that. It's not at the same, it's a different rate, of course, than members or associate members of the association. But if you look on for example, the golf course, there is a so-called associate member, non-resident associate membership that can be acquired for the golf course. And this seems to be limiting a non-resident to me. But the general public is a non-resident. And I'm not, I'm concerned that we're not, I'm concerned we're trying to make a change there. It's not really intended. Let's put it that way.
And so how you read that then, Jim, is that in actuality, non-residents can purchase memberships at a non-resident rate. And this seems to eliminate that option.
Yes, that's right. I'm getting out the current version. Let me see if I can find what I'm looking. Okay. The current version says, for fee-based amenities, the general public may purchase associate memberships or pay daily fees. Historically, I don't like that use of the word associate memberships because you're using associate membership or member and confusing it potentially with associate member in the charter. But be that as it may, the current version specifically refers to what we are calling an associate membership in that amenity by a non-resident. And I'm a little concerned that the draft isn't recognizing that.
Yeah, I think that my understanding is that we eliminated the category of membership in our amenities that had heretofore been called an associate membership. And what we now have is a non-resident, membership use rate, that a non-resident membership purchased at a different rate than a association member rate.
Okay, I don't want to push my memory too much, even though it's from this morning. But I looked at the activity guide for the I'm sorry, not the activity guide, the website entry for the golf course or the golf club, whatever. And it seems to me that the associate member and non-resident application terminology was mixed in there.
Okay.
I don't want
Then
to.
we're going to have to look at that. I think that, I think you're correct that there's been some confusion about that with the language in the charter. And that was one of the reasons that that there had been a move to go away from calling amenity use memberships associate memberships. And so I think we need to, I need to flag this, see that language and see, and we need to go back and look at the language that's being used by our amenities to describe this category of use membership.
Jim, can I, would it, going back to your original, when you originally raised this, what would happen if you just dropped, instead of everything that's crossed out in C, just dropped purchase associate membership? So it would read, for fee-based amenities, the general public may purchase a daily single-use membership.
Well, but
Would
the
that
general
solve?
public can buy a non-membership for example, to play golf. It's more expensive than you and I would buy a membership, an annual membership. Let me phrase it that way. It's more expensive, but the general public can pay become a non-resident member of the course.
Well, I thought your original concern was the fact that they were not able to buy a single day membership.
No, I think it's
Anybody can
confusing.
buy it.
It's saying, this is saying only daily purchases versus what I think Jim is saying is that it's listed already that they have an option to buy
Yeah.
a membership, more than just one day at a time. So the two parts are not meshed together.
Okay,
They're conflicting each other.
I
you know?
misunderstood what we
This
were
is
dropping.
saying,
Okay,
right, this is just saying they are only entitled to be able to do daily fees, paying every time they show up, versus what has already been publicized in the, activity guides and all that as an option to buy an actual multi-day membership.
got it,
And so
got it. Okay,
something's not matching.
got it. Okay.
Okay, we pretty well.
So where are we at?
Well, we're at the,
That's got to be looked at.
there's a place where, further on in that paragraph C, we have a change to that non-members who wish to use buildings that are available to community organizations, those that are at least 60% at no charge shall be required to pay a fee. I don't know that has any comment to it. I don't.
Do you have to ask community organizations for their memberships list to verify who's a resident then?
I think there's something
That what they
later,
do?
Yes,
Okay.
provisions
Yeah.
later on.
we used to use it and provide a list.
Gotcha.
All right, the next paragraph D is eliminated. This is amenities rentals. Individuals and non-association sponsored may reserve. Okay, this seems to, well, unless I'm missing something, by its literal terms, it limits this kind of a rental to only members or residents. That non-residents cannot rent any of the facilities. Is that the way I'm supposed to understand that, Colette?
I believe so. This, Debbie Donahue handles all of the amenities rentals except for the food and beverage. And so I think that this was her recommendation. But the food and beverage, or the banquet, obviously that is not held by her. That is held by the Matt Ork company, or the contractor who's managing the facilities. So I think that language has to be looked at as well, because the exception to this D being eliminated is that the general public is allowed to rent the banquet and meeting facilities in our food and beverage facilities at the beach club, golf club, and yacht club. But the meeting facilities for example, the room that you're in and the rooms in the community center, apparently, according to Debbie, non-association members are not allowed to rent those. So I'll have to double check on that. So I'll put that on my list.
The spring and summer Ocean Pines, spring and summer activity guide, I believe it is. Ocean Pines facility rentals does include nonprofit organizations, non-resident organizations for places like the Pulse meeting room, the East meeting room.
Yeah, and I think what Linda told me is that how that is handled by Debbie doesn't really fit a rule, because it's really subject to availability and the priority list. And so I think she was uncomfortable with having a rule that said that non-association members were entitled to rent these facilities, when she was actually going to have to put them at the very bottom of the list for any rental of this space that's at a premium.
Okay.
So I'll revisit that with John.
Okay, on that page, that's the last, whoops, I'm sorry. Down in marketing, make sure I'm not missing something here. There's a minor change with regard to when a marketing plan is developed. And it's changed from shall to will be developed, presented to the board with the annual budget process. It used to have it no later than the April board meeting, but now just with the budget process, I don't know that that kind of thing is a particular reason for us to comment on. Continue on from that, the next step down again is a word change from common understanding to a mutual understanding. Again, that's change in words that doesn't change the content any. And further on down is a change of And technologies work in synergy to increase membership amenity use, to work in cooperation rather than synergy. Again, if anybody has any comments on that, I doubt it. Moving right along. The next one, it pertains to the comprehensive annual plan. This is a successful customer resource management planning. And it says management shall develop and present a customer service plan to the board, and goes on from there. Does anybody have, my only comment on that, it seems to be open-ended. It just says it's going to be made to the board, but when?
Yeah, Jim, I think I think was amended by Linda and John based on the currently in process strategic planning that's going on, that I think this is going to be folded into that as one of the objectives in the strategic plan. And that the time frame and so forth will be in the strategic plan itself.
Okay.
So if I could ask a question, is the assumption that this annual survey would continue to be an annual survey?
What survey are you talking about? The annual customer service plan?
Yes. I mean, the plan will include a customer satisfaction surveys for all amenities and presentation recommendation to the board. Candidly, my belief is that there are a lot of residents who do not feel that they get satisfactory customer service.
Yeah, this is not happening right now. I guess is the issue. The contract with the Matt Ork Company requires customer service data gathering and feedback to the general manager and from the general manager to the board. And that's the closest I think we've come to achieving what this CRM and the comprehensive annual plan. So we are out of compliance with this, I would say. And so my understanding is that one of the performance objectives in the strategic plan will address itself to this. That will be part of the strategic plan for the amenities and facilities.
Okay, so let me ask what I think are two questions. One is, as I understand what you're saying, Colette, is that this upcoming comprehensive annual plan will include more than just input from Matt Ort. It will include those facilities where Ort does not have any role.
Yeah, it's already starting in golf. It will be starting in the racket center. I think it will, then the next will be the aquatics. I think John is going from facility to facility, working with the advisory committees to get input on the customer service, crafting a customer service survey so that data could be used to present a plan. But the first step is to develop the surveys themselves. And I think you're aware of that with respect to golf because you're on the golf advisory committee.
Well, there was a discussion about I'm not sure I'm using the right term, user's manual or some type, where the members of the committee were encouraged to make suggestions as to what to be included.
Yeah, this is something else.
I
haven't been going to the golf advisory committees, but the weekly meetings that the president and vice president of the association have with John to discuss initiatives and to update the board. this is what has been discussed in the golf portion of those discussions, that John has asked, and I thought it was the advisory committee, to provide input on a customer satisfaction survey. And there, my understanding is there was discussion as to whether this would be paper-based, where there would be customer service cards, or if it would be a Survey Monkey, exactly. And I think it's the development of it is in process, and those decisions have not been made. He's awaiting recommendations from the advisory committee, is my understanding.
So my second question then is that there would still be an annual survey that is being done. What you're describing is something more expansive than what you had described earlier about Ort being involved to make data collection that goes up to John and then goes to the board. So you're
Yeah, and as far as I know, no, we have got, since I've been on the board, this is my 5th year, we have not received any reports on customer satisfaction from anybody regarding any amenity. And so this needs to be corrected, and we discussed it as being part of I'm losing my words here, the comprehensive strategic plan for the association. And
Okay.
so if you feel that the language of this should, be different, certainly we would be open to that suggestion. But I think what you're getting into is kind of beyond the purview of the Bylaws Committee, and that, your look is to make sure that there's nothing in here that is inconsistent with our other governing documents. And this is a policy question. Does the board feel that we should be receiving an annual customer service plan from every amenity? That would be a policy decision, not a governance decision.
Well, I was raising the issue as to what was being done, but that's fine.
Right. Yeah,
I
and I think that's where we're headed, is some policy language. And I think it's acknowledged that perhaps M02 is going to need to go through another revision as some of these other things unfold. Any legislation, as we referenced earlier, and the strategic plan.
All right, let's move on from that. I think we've pretty well covered it. In 9A, there's the word amenity is added to membership value, and that's just not a relevant addition. I should at the beginning have indicated that in May, we did prepare and send forward a charging document to have this resolution reviewed, and indicated various areas in it that we thought needed some consideration. So that's again more background as to why we have a draft before us today, in addition to the now kind of discarded sanctions provision being a part of it as well. Number 10, the charter club memberships have been deleted. That was one of the questions that we've had. Is that still a continuing opportunity for someone? That the charter club memberships date back to about 1982 or 83, and it's a reduced membership, club type membership, golf and that sort of thing, that if you originally qualified for it, you had to keep buying the same membership every year. Now, I'm just going to presume that they no longer exist, but that's been deleted. And I don't. Does anybody have any comment? That's the background of what that provision was. So it's being deleted.
Yeah, Jim, my understanding was that the charter club membership was a special category created for lifetime golf memberships, and those have been eliminated. It was a one-time availability, and once that was satisfied, they got the number of people who were interested in that signed up. If they were no longer offered, And then since then, that whole concept has been eliminated.
The next page, or the bottom of the page, starts with the parking permits, and there's a, in addition to the second subparagraph that notwithstanding the prior subparagraph, no more than one parking permit will be issued to a property. It used to say, or it says now, property address. Address is intended to be deleted and replaced with owners. Anybody have any comment on that provision?
Can, Josh, can you scooch it just up to include both parts of that, A and B?
Yeah, it's gonna be on two
No,
different
other way,
pages. Keep
other
going.
way, yeah,
there you go.
there. Because now I'm confused. If A says, and they have crossed out, purchase a parking permit, is the word A in there? Are you saying they can purchase more than one parking permit? But yet letter B says no more than one parking permit will be issued to an owner. Am I misreading something?
If you
Or
own 3 properties, you could get 3 permits.
okay, so then I would recommend then, if you're crossing out the word one and the number one, then wouldn't you want to make it grammatically better and say parking permit and then put the S in parentheses, like you could get a permit or more than one? It just doesn't.
Okay, could I
so right
weigh in
to-
on this here? The concept here had to do with properties that have multiple owners, say 2 or 3 families own a property. Each one of those families would be entitled to buy a parking permit. So each owner is allowed to buy a single parking permit, but each property may have multiple permits issued to their multiple owners.
Would that not be the same as the ability to vote, only one vote per property?
No, it's not.
I can't.
It's with
Okay.
voting, the requirement is that the multiple property owners identify a principal single property owner, owner of that property, because the vote goes with the property ownership. But the parking permits, what I'm told by the membership department, is that the parking permits, each owner of a single property is entitled to purchase a parking permit. The permits don't go with the property, they go with the ownership, whereas the voting rights go with the property, not with the ownership.
So there then would be no limit to the number of people that could be on that title as owners.
I guess so. I mean, and I don't know how that works for LLCs. I guess there are LLCs that are owned by, that multiple ownership is structured as an LLC or other entity of that nature. But apparently there are, families who buy homes, like it's adult siblings, who each have their own family, will buy a house at Ocean Pines, and it will be, they each will have equal ownership in it. And each of their names is on the title. And so they are considered separate owners.
A grammatically still does not work for me.
That for me either.
So that's what I'm questioning. If we can take out the word one, if you're not
Just-
limiting it for A, property owners and resident
Permits with a
renters,
bracket around the
you
edge.
need another word, you need to add something in there. And that's why I suggested, say, if you're gonna say may purchase parking permit and then add the parentheses S or something to indicate for use at the beach club so that property owners can, I don't know, it just doesn't.
Yeah, I
flow.
think you're right, Laura. I think putting parens around S after permit would solve that issue.
You also need to redesignate it to 10, not 11,
Well.
because you're
yeah,
striking 10 out.
You're right. Right, it should be 10. That
So
one.
then,
Okay,
what 10B should now read 10A.
yeah.
Yeah.
B should now
Right,
read
yeah.
10A.
I think I understand the possible change, but it's got, if the intention that is every owner of a property is eligible to buy a permit, you gotta make sure that that's crystal clear in A. And it's my understanding is that the, whatever it is, the membership office, it understands this to mean that every owner on the deed is entitled to a property permit, a parking permit. Got to make sure that if that's what we're doing, we got to make sure that that's
Because
clear.
if I'm an owner, but I rent my home out to a long-term renter, let's say, technically that's saying I can get a parking permit and my renter can get a parking permit, right?
The renter's not an owner.
It says resident
But it
renters.
says resident renters.
Yeah, I think that needs to be
Renter-
clarified with the membership department.
That's true.
That's kind of fuzzy to me.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good job.
Okay, if
I
we,
mean, is it a long-term renter
You're right.
or are we saying that every 1 week renter for their summer vacation can buy their own parking permit for that week that they're there? At their own and not have to use the owner's parking permit? Is that what we're saying or is it
Right,
real?
that's a good question, Laura.
Thank you.
in B, the change of address to owner, what happens, when you use the term owner, what happens if you have an owner who owns 5 properties and rents them? Does that mean that owner is limited to 1 parking lot permit? I don't think that's what's intended.
Right, it needs to be clarified.
One. per-
Okay, I got that.
Okay, if we pretty well run that one around, okay. We've gone down through and deleted G in
Yeah, that's all.
12, so we're past that point. We're down in scheduling. I think the next several, like 13A and 13B appear to be simple substitution, not substitution, but addition of a GM or designee. That's not of importance to us in our consideration. D is deleted. Okay, that has to do with the scheduling process and starting it off. I think this is what's happening here is deleting and revising in part how the scheduling works. And again, that's not really in our area. There will be a renumbering of the paragraphs there with the deletion of D, or whatever it is. Yeah, D.
Yeah, subsequent alpha characters.
Yeah. I'm going on down through here. It looks to me like where we go from here down through this next page, whichever paragraph we're in again, scheduling is all administrative processes, which the additions or deletions that occur in there are not really something that come into our consideration unless somebody has a different view of that.
No.
Okay, that takes us to the next page, and there's a listing of participant use rules. The only thing that's changed there is the specific reference to tennis and paddleball has been changed to racket sports, and food and beverages added into there. There is the yellow highlighted rules are not subject to pre-implementation approval by the board. That was awaiting potential input from Jeremy. Is there anything in addition to that? Or is that wrapped up in a kind of what we've already talked about?
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
yes.
Jeremy that's highlighted because when Linda and I went through this, we were uncomfortable with that statement. Jeremy was uncomfortable also. He believes that the rules are subject to pre-implementation approval by the board. And so he recommended that we strike "are" out of that and that it are not. So it would read rules are subject to a pre-implementation approval by the board. That was his recommendation.
Okay. That's something else here on rules. I think that's it. Let me quick, well, that's the end of that. Let me double check something. Okay. All right, I disregard my diversion of thoughts there. I don't have anything. I personally don't have anything further. Anybody else want to comment? No. Okay, let's, without any further comment, let's consider our review of M02 completed. Now then,
And so are you wanting, once the board takes care of all these other issues on my list here, that it come back to you?
why don't we try to, my suggestion is you can go ahead and go to a first reading on this.
Okay,
We can look at what the first reading is.
okay,
Before the next meeting, we should have opportunity to look at it and comment as may be necessary before you, unless you're gonna have a first reading and right after that, a special meeting.
no, we won't be doing that. There's no urgency to this.
Okay. All right. Let
We have to have a special committee.
me find the agenda here. We can check off B01 and we can check off M02 down in new business. Okay, next item. And we're gonna try to move as fast as we can. Much of this is just a consideration of what's happened. The next item on the agenda is the M01 Compliance Procedures. That was considered, again, there was another charging document from us on this. And it was at the, considered at the June 22nd board meeting. And the questions in there about how we are actually handling CPI violations and the process by which they make it to some disposition, if I put it that way, did not or does not appear to be being handled as it is described in the prescribed in the resolution for various reasons, perhaps one of which would be COVID-19 and court availability for such issues. At any rate, the consideration of M02 has been referred to the ARC committee, or at least that was the action that was to be taken at the board meeting. And this is just a simple verification, or so Bob can enter a necessary comment if it's not already there. But at the board meeting, the review of M02, or at least a review of parts of it for recommendations to the board, has been made to the ARC committee, and then it could be coming back to the board for further consideration at a future date.
That's correct. I prepared a charging document for the ARC liaison, and she was taking it to their next meeting, which was either this past Tuesday or the coming Tuesday.
Okay.
So that did happen.
Okay, Bob, if you could figure out some appropriate comment for our staff. And basically, again, much of what we're going down here in the next several steps is a make sure we got the right status and all agreed status type entry on our documentation. The next item on the agenda is the resolution B04, which is the development of the board meeting agenda, and that was also considered at the, our charging document requesting review was considered at the June 22nd board meeting. We commented that we did not see any reason for there to be a further review. We didn't have any items or topics of the resolution that we thought needed to be given some specific consideration, and the board effectively agreed with that. But my suggestion or proposal is we simply show that as having been reviewed at that board meeting without any changes to be made to the resolution. Any comments? I hope, Paulette, I have correctly stated that. I believe I have.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
The board agreed with you guys.
What do you want to use for the review date then?
It's called reviewed as of June, and then advance it out to
Okay, June.
June this year. Yeah, and then I guess 2-year review, something like that.
Okay, June to June. Okay.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the M08 resolution. This is the so-called association manuals resolution, where we identified a number of documents within the association that met a definition of manual or association manual as it's in the as defined in the resolution itself. And after consideration by this committee, we recommended to the board in a charging document that the resolution should be rescinded, that the topics in there are administrative or administration management oriented documents that need to be or should be monitored and maintained up to date as a part of management, not through some attempt at a resolution, which really can't be, the compliance with can't really be verified unless you go and do an audit. Somebody does an audit. I think it's accurate to say that view was generally accepted in the board by the board, with the exception of the financial policy manual or financial policy and procedures manuals. There's 2 of them in particular because their current date is 2006. And I think it's accurate to say that they're probably woefully in need of updating. Doug Parks is the one that raised this kind of a concern regarding those manuals in particular. And he had indicated his intention to come back at, if not the next board meeting, certainly a future board meeting, with a way in which those manuals in particular should be monitored and controlled. So that the rescinding of M08 is continues to be an item before the board.
Okay.
Moving right along. C08 is the elections committee procedure. That's the procedure by which the committee does its operations. It's not the elections and referendums resolution M06. It's just their how their committee is formed and its duties. The review of this resolution got mixed up in consideration of changes to M06. I'm giving you some explanation for an oversight here. M06 has been deferred until after the election for further consideration for a variety of reasons. But in a correspondence from the elections committee dated March 28th, the committee did indicate that the C08 was acceptable as is. So I don't have the email with me, but if anybody's interested in looking at the email, I can certainly provide it. But that resolution should have been shown as reviewed as of March of this year. and can be extended out to the appropriate amount of time. Sooner or later, we're going to get to something we got to talk about. But we got a couple more steps before we get there. Okay. All right, the next agenda item is C02, C011, and C5, not C0, but C11 and C15. 2 is the Art Committee's resolution. 11 is the Golf Committee's resolution, and 15 is the Aquatics resolution. I had requested that each of those committees, to a request to the chair of each of those committees, that they please consider those for review or any changes that the respective committees may see necessary to their respective resolutions, and respond if any action to be taken by July 1st. And I've not heard anything under our policies and procedures. We are considering non-response to be no required action to be taken, and that the resolutions have been reviewed. So as of July 1st, those 3 resolutions can be shown as reviewed. Okay, we'll check that off. I mean, I've got more pages that I'm checking off here than I know what to do with. Okay. F02 is going to require a little bit more of the same kind of explanation. F02, we're going back into the early part of last year. We're going back to about the same time last year as right now. F02 was requested to be reviewed. F02 is the budget development resolution. And one of the comments that have been made from this committee about that resolution had to deal with reporting by the general manager. And was the reporting being done really what the resolution indicates? A change proposal came up as a first reading. I think actually he went to second reading as well. I believe it came up for the Budget and Finance Committee, and it was turned down at a board meeting dated November 20th, 2021. And there's been no further action regarding that resolution. My suggestion is we simply consider it reviewed as of that date. And as far as a future review date, I think we had it on an annual basis. We're well past the budget process this year. Just put it out to 2023 after the budget process is completed next year. I see no purpose in trying to revisit that at this time. I'm continuing on here. Please interrupt me if anybody wants to take exception.
No, I don't want to take, I'm just curious, what was the suggested change that was ultimately rejected, if you know?
I don't have the notes with me.
Okay,
I
that's
didn't
fine.
bring it with me.
That's all right.
There are various provisions in there about perhaps year-to-date, monthly, and so forth, and I don't remember.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't want to divert us into a side conversation, but my feeling is that the reporting requirements need to be minimal as possible that you get from the general manager, what you think is really important, but leave it as wide open as possible for him to be as creative in what he reports, with the board saying, hey, wait, that's not enough, we need more kind of situation.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that notion.
But anyway, that's
Okay.
that's 30 seconds too much discussion of not relevant importance. Okay, M04. Let me look at my other notes here. All right, Colette, this is where I need to kind of turn to you. There was an email, and I probably have got my paper scattered all over here, and I'm never going to find it again, in which we, myself as the chair, let's put it that way, communicated that on M04, which is the maintenance of lots, indicated that we don't see this resolution is the one that gives the general manager the authority to go out and cut the weeds in the grass if they've reached a certain point. And it's based on a specific declaration of restrictions provision. Unless that declaration of restrictions provision is changed, there's no real reason to review this provision. The only other reason, resolution, I'm sorry. The only other reason would be if the board wants to take away that authority from the general manager. So that the proposal is that we simply put in our documentation that we don't review this unless there is a DR change. Now, again, it was just in an email sent to you, among other things, which are also on this list on the agenda. Do we really need to put that in a charging document? This kind of thing was communicated before we really started using charging documents for this kind of information. Should we?
Yeah. It sounds like what you're asking is just, does the board agree that this doesn't need to be reviewed unless there is a change to the DRs?
That's the question. That would be our position unless otherwise told not to.
Okay, and I am not remembering this email. And so this is not something I took to the board, so I will take it to the board. And I'm going to assume that they're going to agree with you guys. It makes perfect sense.
Okay, if you need me to, I can put it in a charging document.
No, that's not necessary.
Okay. Unless the DR changes, which is highly unlikely, we have a resolution sits out there for the GM to do. And it's a resolution that's been in effect for decades.
Right.
Okay, the next one down is a little bit different story. This is F03, the reserve accounts. This was also to the board in the November 2021 board meeting. And it's somewhat in the same category of what we talked about on the F02 amendment that to the resolution that did not get passed at that day regarding the F02 resolution. For some reason, and you'd have to go back to the video, which I have done, not in the last couple of days, but in the last month or so, maybe month to 2 months, for whatever reason, what the issue here is that the reserve, the bylaws require that there a resolution pick up each of the reserve accounts and some other information regarding the reserve account, where the money's coming from, and I believe that sort of thing in the bylaws. But at any rate, the bylaws require reserve accounts be established in a resolution. We've been carrying a drainage account for some period of time, back into perhaps as far back as at least this time a year ago, if not further. And a draft of a change to F03, the reserve account resolution, was prepared and went to the board. And for whatever confusion occurred, it also got voted down. I think if you could find the minutes of that meeting, I think you still get to them on the website. You'll find they got voted down. Well, it should not have. We're still, or at least there's not been a treasurer's report that reflected the reserve account status in the last 2 or 3 board meetings. But the most recent board meeting in which the reserve accounts were displayed, we're still showing drainage as an account. Now, presumably we're going to keep, with drainage being an issue, presumably we're going to keep having that as a reserve account. So it should be picked up in the reserve account resolution. Now, yeah, what that's really going to mean is resubmit another draft to to update that resolution unless we're going to stop using drainage as a separate account. So I'm kind of looking for guidance there, Colette.
Yeah, John seems pretty firm in his belief that a drainage account, it should be separately, should exist separately from the other reserve accounts, as evidenced by his, asking the board to authorize putting money into that account from our retained earnings last year. So I don't recall this coming to the board. I believe that it did, what you say. And I think your argument makes perfect sense that this should be added into resolution F03. Do you want to just send that draft to me? I was not president at the time that this happened. And so I don't know what, I don't recall how that unfolded. But I would certainly be willing to take it back to the board. I think you make a very cogent argument as to why we do this. And I don't recall why we would have voted that down.
Okay, Bob, did you have a comment?
No, is that a charging
Yeah,
document?
okay. Well, I don't know if it needs to be a charge. I'll get the information out and just bring it back to you as it may not be appropriate for this committee, but just resurrect the original proposal draft.
Yeah, did BNF weigh in on this?
I don't know at this point in time.
Okay, I can consult with them as well.
Well, I will get a draft to you. There has to be a draft in the records. If I don't have a copy in my own files, there's got to be a copy in the meeting materials. Okay,
Right.
I'll follow up. The action is for me
Okay.
to follow up and get information to Colette.
Okay.
Okay, M07 is the next item. This is Bulkheads of Waterways. This one does not, I don't believe, in fact, I'm reasonably sure, does not have a charging document. I think it would not have, because it came up at the March 23rd board meeting of this year. I've got March 23rd. I guess it was March 23rd. At any rate, there are two issues in that. One is the canal depth, determining the canal depth, how it's done, who does it, and responsibilities there involved there. And a second issue is there are provisions I haven't asked anybody or Josh to display the resolution, but there are provisions in the resolution regarding responsibilities of the property owner when bulkheads are replaced. And the owner has to replace things on their own expense that interfere, so to speak, with a replacement of the bulkhead. There was a comment made by me at the meeting, is that it seemed to me that some of those provisions in the resolution, this is M07 again, really belong, for example, in something like the ARC guidelines regarding what the owner's responsibility are for when it comes to replacing a bulkhead. Because you're placing requirements on the owner that you're going to expect to be able to enforce. Either they should be in something like the ARC guidelines, which has to be filed in the Snow Hill HOA depository, or we need to start filing the resolution in the depository, which there's things in there that were enforceable or should be considered enforceable against the owner of the property, including I think perhaps assessment of the owner of costs if they don't do things that they're expected to do. But anyway, that was at the meeting March 23rd. Now, again, this is not a charging document. There's no charging document on that, but it's an outstanding item. And I don't believe it's come up again at the board level, Colette. So I'm not sure how we want to proceed from here on that kind of situation.
Okay, I think what I will have, I think I was president then, right?
It's mid-March, I think so.
Yeah, I think I was. I think I became president in December or
That was all
January.
kinds of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so I will look into this. I will follow up and find out that the ball just got dropped or if, what happened.
Yeah, those costs could be significant because it could involve moving a boat lift and putting it back in.
Yeah, and the practice is that it is the responsibility of the property owner. Believe me, I lived through that.
Yeah.
It's my property.
Okay.
All right, now we're finally, and actually we got some more time left before 3 o'clock. We're finally into something we need to do something besides me talk and Bob make notes on his status sheet. M05 animal control. This is another one that was considered at the March 23rd meeting. Here's the issues with that resolution. Number one, the resolution was discussed. The chief of police was there and also discussed that the basic purpose of this is if for some reason the police department has to take an animal into control that's running loose, a dog, we're talking dogs in particular, but running loose and needs to be controlled. Way back when Chief Massey wanted to make sure that he had to take custody of the animal. If he had to expend money to do that, he could charge the owner of a dog that showed up to clean their dog. But at any rate, the content of the resolution is not in need of update. But what is missing, or not missing, what does need to be updated is the authority part. The authority A references the annotated code of general public laws of Maryland. Article 26, section 26 existed when this resolution was originally drafted and approved, but that's not any longer a correct reference in the Maryland code. Maryland code has been gone through over a period of many years of a revision where you went from a numbering of articles to a alphabetic listing of topics,
Subject
codes, code subjects. The original articles 1 through well over 100, I believe, was more or less in alphabetical order, except of course there's only 26 letters in the alphabet. But that reference is incorrect.
Let's put another.
And do you have the correct reference, Jim? It seems like it'd be simple to replace it.
Yeah, hang on a second. I can. I'll get to a bottom line here real quick.
Okay.
The B is correct as far as Worcester County. The C is incorrect for the annotated code of Maryland. It's actually 10-619. It's a typographical error. My suggestion is I have Word copies of these things. I can put in the right references and send you a proposed draft.
Great. And then we can do a first reading. Sure.
I'll go ahead and do that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Again, I wound up doing all the talking here. The proposal is we submit a draft that corrects these authorities, and I'll go ahead and take care of that.
And you would delete 2A, obviously.
I won't delete it. I'll just update it. There is in fact a code reference now.
Okay.
But it's in
the provision is moved to another.
To the criminal law article, right?
Yeah, it's moved to the criminal law.
Right.
But that it's no longer Article 26. That's
Right.
That's what the point
Right.
is.
You just, okay,
And
you
it's-
renamed it. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
it's,
I'm sorry.
it's now named criminal law instead of Article 26 type
Yeah, I
thing.
got you. Okay.
Okay, so just question for clarification.
Yeah.
If someone has a complaint about, let's say, a neighbor, doesn't, who walks their dog, does not keep it on a leash, who is the one who enforces that? Is that, do they need to call the, Worcester County Animal Control or our police department? Or does OPA have any enforcement in that?
I'm hesitant to enter into it. That's a county code provision,
Okay.
which Worcester, I mean, I
Because
would
that's,
think
that's
Ocean
what,
Pines has the authority to enforce Worcester County law. No, I don't want to be,
right,
I
okay,
don't
I'm
want to
just
be making.
clarifying because,
I don't,
I've seen that question come up
Right.
Before, where, you know, everybody says, why doesn't the association fix and correct things? Well, in this case, it really needs to go through animal control at the county level, not,
well, I don't know, it would be,
Right.
I don't know, it would be animal control. I'm hesitant to try to answer your question.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
In
Do you
fact,
want me to try to get a question from Chief Harrison?
well, it would,
This is fine for me.
Okay.
I'm just.
Laura, do you want to just, if you want an answer, you can email info@oceanpines.org. And the question will get to the right person and you'll get an answer.
okay. Moving right along from animals, we're down to petitions. Again, this is another item that was discussed at the March 23rd meeting. The question came up in the meeting. I could open up the bylaws, but I'm going to go by memory. The question came up, the bylaws specify that when a petition is circulated, the petition has to reflect the name of the person who is representing the petitioners, meaning the person who is going to represent those who sign the petition, and presumably the petition will in turn go to the secretary for the petition review process. The bylaws say the person representing those who sign must be identified on the petition itself. Now, there could be multiple pages to the petition, and you got identification would go along with the individual pages. The question came up: can someone other than a member be that member of the association be that represented? Now, there's two ways to look at that. What my proposal is, we make some kind of a discussion as to what to do about that, rather than I think we could. We're not going to be able to wait for the board to come back for more with more information to us. It's effectively been, let's consider that question passed back to us. Can a non-member of the association be the person who represents the member of the association petitioners? You have to be a member of the association to sign and be a petitioner. Okay. My thinking is it could be one of two or three things. You think, well, the likelihood of it ever being anybody but a member is pretty slim and none. So let's just keep going. Forget about it and worry about it some other day. Another situation could be, though, there are places in our own resolutions, and I think also perhaps in our governing documents, but certainly in the Homeowners Association Act, where an agent can act for a member of the association. So in that consideration, it would be hard for me to say that an agent could not be the person who represents the petitions, as long as that agent was identified as to, or not the agent identified, certainly the agent would have to be identified, but whom the agent was acting for. A member that was acting for or acting in the place of, or with the authority of a member, I'd be hard pressed to say that would be, we could, that the association could refuse to accept such a petition representative. So we got, I think we have, again, I'm looking at this, we need to answer the question that came up with the board. The board question was, I guess I'm paraphrasing, can someone other than a member be that person who represents the petitioners? So I think we have at least a decision between saying, well, we don't think it's very likely, we're going to forget about it. We think we should just forget about it and let it slide on down to the future, or should we confront this situation and say, okay, it can be an agent, and I think that you could put something in the resolution regarding that doesn't have to be in the bylaws. All we're doing is adding an implementation clarification in a resolution to what's in the bylaws. That's my view. Maybe that would have to be, could and should be referred to the counsel, Jeremy Tucker, with any proposed draft. But at any rate, we have a decision. Forget about it, or somehow address the question of who can someone represent the petitioners, and if so, what has to be said about it. Anyway, hopefully I haven't confused everybody and where we are. What I'm saying is we need to confront that to get this item moved. And we don't have to do that to a completion today. I understand that.
The board asked the question, right?
Yep.
I think we have an obligation to answer it.
Yep. I would agree with that.
Okay, we're that far.
Okay. I just going by your description, Tim, I would, in my mind, make a distinction between the grant by the homeowners association to an agent to act, as opposed to the homeowners association or the governing body of the homeowners association being presented with a petition for some form of change. I mean, my guess, and I haven't read the statute, but my guess would be that where the homeowners association designates an agent, it's usually for some action to be taken, it's also going to be accompanied by some sort of contractual arrangement whereby the agent's going to get compensated for the work that they do. So to me, those are two separate considerations. But by the same token, I could see a situation whereby a petition is a group of homeowners within the association seek to file a petition for consideration that may be, for lack of a better term, technical or legal in nature, that needs further explanation than, a layperson might feel comfortable providing. So at the risk of splitting the baby in half, what I would suggest would be to require that a member of the association be designated as the spokesperson for the petitioners, but that the spokesperson is entitled to bring with them and delegate to them appropriate opportunity to comment before the board. I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, but I mean, that would be sort of what I would suggest. In other words, if you're raising, for argument's sake, and I'm not sure it would come up this way, but let's just say for a moment, it comes up as a matter of environmental concern. In other words, the whole discussion that took place earlier, was it this year or end of last year, about the use of effluent on the golf course. People were raising environmental concerns. If someone is going to petition the board on that, they should have the opportunity to bring in a chemist or an engineer or someone of that nature who can explain to the board, this is what we're driving at with this petition. Whereas I don't think a layperson could address that sufficiently. So, now whether or not for lack of a better term, the expert is compensated or not, that's entirely up to the petitioners. But the petitioner should have the opportunity to make or have an expert make representations to the board about the subject matter of the petition. That, I mean, that's sort of what I would, just thinking about it, that'd be the way I would approach it.
So let me make sure I understand it. You would make the bylaws part of it, if I can put it that way, identifying the person who is representing the petitioners would be a member, but that member is entitled to have assistance in presenting the petition, whether it's whether it's at a hearing or otherwise to the secretary, and as well as actually circulating the petition itself.
Well, and I'm not. Yes, I agree with you up to the point you got to the circulation question. Because I mean, are we talking about circulating the petition for signatures in order to get it to the secretary?
If there needs to be some accompanying circulation, somebody carrying it around needs somebody to have along with them for further explanation. That's what I'm
Well, I think the explanation occurs when the board meets with the designated petition spokesperson at that time. I mean, I would, the rest of the responsibility, I think, lies with the members of the association themselves.
Okay, I'll withdraw.
So that, I mean, again,
I muddied the waters a little bit.
yeah, I mean, that'd be sort of my thought, but I mean, you know, I'm just sort of, this is all a matter of first impression, so.
Yeah. Are we talking about a petition that has now been completed and whether it can be represented by a third party?
In particular, petitions going forward, but then signed is going forward.
Yes, that would be my, that would be my thought.
A signed petition that's already signed with sufficient signatures.
Right, you know, it's, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is petition is circulated, there's sufficient number of signatures, the secretary at some point certifies it as such, and then the board hears about it. I mean, there's a hearing of some nature,
The
right?
board has to go forward with a hearing.
Right, so at the time of the hearing, when the board has to make a determination, it would seem to me that's where you would want the expertise to be available to the board. That's sort of what I'm getting at.
Well, under normal conditions, if somebody has a problem, they go to the board.
Mhm.
If the board turns them down and they disagree with the board, then they'll get enough people to sign a petition
So the petition,
to make sure. Now, if they do that, then they should be able to have legal representation, either expertise or legal, whichever.
Yeah, whatever
required.
terms.
And it's between the homeowners and that individual, how he gets paid, if he gets paid, if he's not part of the organization. If he happens to be a property owner, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
But if he's not a property owner, then they should be able to bring legal or representation in. That would be logical. And does that require a bylaw change? The bylaws don't, if the bylaws are silent on it, then I don't see any reason why you can't have that as part of the resolution.
What we're talking about, in my opinion, does not conflict with the bylaws.
Yeah, it's more of a mechanical or mechanism fix than
Yeah.
it is a substantive change to the bylaws. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
right.
I don't think you have to change the bylaws.
No, I wouldn't think so.
They're silent on that, so.
But the resolution affords the
It tells-
petitioners the opportunity to bring in someone of
The property
expert,
owner,
yeah,
right, the opportunity to bring somebody in with that level of expertise.
who does not have to be a property owner.
No, I'm good.
Let me, all right, well, what we're talking about, kind of specifically general, is the answer is the representative or the what says in the bylaws must be a member. But the member is entitled to be able to draw on other resources where necessary in
Yeah.
presenting a petition at whatever
Yeah.
level it has to be presented. Okay, Steve, you're pretty much the thought process behind this. But I'm also reluctant to ask you to to draft something for us if you could, because
You want me to draft it as the form of a resolution?
yeah, could you do that?
I can take a crack at it. Let me ask for, if you can email me next couple of days, the relevant bylaw provision and some sort of molded resolution that I can just sort of cut and paste and insert appropriate language.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah, I'll take a crack at it.
okay.
And then you want me to send it back to you, or you want me to send it to all the members?
I want you to send it back to me and then I'll.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'll take a crack at it.
Okay, last item on the unfinished business, and we're getting pretty close to our 2-hour limit, but I think we can get all the way through this.
Looks like it.
Colette, the last item on the unfinished business really is something that kind of has to be addressed to you. Where do we stand on the updating of the bylaws? So we're approaching two months now since the referendum.
You're muted. You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Yeah,
Sorry, I got an email from Jeremy yesterday that the amended and restated bylaws are ready. They were proofreading them, I think, and he was going to get them to me by close of business today.
okay. We're approaching that time, so we'll keep moving here.
Yes.
All right, we've got a couple of, one really new business item left, and that's C01 General Committee. This is the resolution that specifies committee application process, committee terms, committee responsibilities, liaison, chairman, that, all of that kind of information. This is due for review in September. Colette, here's where I'm going to have a little bit of help from you as well. At the last executive council meeting, this resolution was discussed in some detail before this was ever considered for review. In fact, the first consideration at this committee is as of today. And if I recall correctly, there was a subcommittee appointed to consider amendments to that resolution. Where that goes is not something for discussion here, whether anything has gone forward with that. But this committee needs to go on record as requesting a review of that resolution. And my proposal is that a charging document for requesting review be generated. We don't need to go into, in this particular case, we really don't need to go in and try to look at the resolution and look at particular areas that may need to be considered. There have been committee application process questions and problems and issues and whatever over a period of time that could be looked at and identified and maybe asked for clarification, but I don't really, I don't see that as something that's really necessary to go into a charging document. But my proposal to the committee is that we issue a charging document requesting a review, stating that the review is due in September, this coming September, and then let the process take its role, take its course, because in between then, there's going to be the election, there's going to be an organization meeting, and responsibilities are going to change, and who knows, initiatives may change, and whether or not efforts that have been undertaken by members of the executive council on this particular subject could or would get lost in the shuffle is another story. I'm just suggesting that we initiate a charging document requesting that this be reviewed and then let our liaison take it from there. Because again, there may or may not have been already work undertaken under that, and I would not like to see it get lost. Because it was a relatively extensive conversation at the executive council. Any comments from the committee first?
No,
Colette, comments from you on that?
Yeah, I know that subcommittee they kind of got stalled, I think, and I requested an update a week or two ago, and they scheduled a meeting for
Okay.
themselves to get together and I guess restart or come to some conclusion. But yes, I think a charging document is needed at this point in time because we don't want to have this lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, that's specifically my interest in getting something formalized that could be in hand and used
Yes.
by in particular to because I know this was your agenda item and certainly an appropriate one at that meeting. I personally would not like to see us get lost. Effort get lost. It needs to be taken. The resolution does need to be reviewed regardless of what else may be going on. Okay, I will go ahead and initiate a charging document, send it to Colette with copies to everybody, but it'll be just simply a request for review, due for review in September, please.
Okay.
Okay, believe it or not, we are at 3 o'clock and it's the last item on the agenda. Anybody have anything further they want to talk about? If not, the next meeting is scheduled for August 19th. On a Friday at 1 p.m. here in this meeting room, as well as a virtual meeting. And we'll see who, well, Colette, we do have a committee application. You do have that, do you?
If you send it to me, I have it. Was that a while ago?
I'm sorry, say it again.
was that a while ago?
Yeah, it's last week or so.
Yeah, let me look here. I have a pile of stuff for the July meeting.
I know that feeling.
That is the new member who is sitting there, right? Or
It's been in the meeting, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and what's that individual's name?
Ken Petrini.
Oh, Ken. Yes, welcome. So I believe I have that in my email, but I will follow up and make sure. I may have sent it on to Linda,
Okay. I've
but
signed
I'll
it.
make sure.
I've signed a copy and left it for you here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to be coming up there after this meeting, so I'll check on it. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry I wasn't physically present. Somehow I got the idea that this meeting was at 2, but then my phone alerts reminded me that it was at 1 and I didn't have time to get my act together to get up there. So,
Okay, we're ready to adjourn. Is there any objection to adjourning?
No.
Okay, motion
Motion.
to further call. Thank you, everybody.
okay, thank you all.